Hello friends, it's Lisa and welcome to episode 2 of my 5-star predictions reading vlogs. So at the beginning of the year I picked 8 books that I thought were going to be 5 stars that I plan to read this year. 4 were 2020 releases and 4 were backlisted titles, and I'm going to be doing some vlogs throughout the year reading these books to see if they are 5 stars or not. So like I said, this is episode 2, so if you want to watch the first video I did like this, I will have that linked below. You can see how the first couple of 5-star predictions went for me, but this video I have 2 more books that I'm going to be reading and I'm very excited about both of them. And for these vlogs, I'm choosing one of the new releases and one of the backlisted titles to read for each vlog. So for the 2022 release for this particular episode, I am reading The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. It definitely was a bit bold of me to put a thriller / mystery on my 5-star predictions list because I don't always have the most success with those genres, but because I love the guest list, I decided to put this one on there. And the backlisted title I'm reading for this video is The Atlas 6 by Unported. This is a dark academia with magic and a secret societies and a competition between characters, and I have heard a lot of really great things about this book, a lot of not so great things about this book, and I was really interested in it, so I thought it could be a 5-star from me. Obviously, that's the whole point of this vlog. But yeah, those are the 2 books I'm reading for this particular 5-star predictions vlog, and I will just let you get into it and we can see if these were 5 stars or not. I have started reading The Atlas 6 by Unported. I'm almost 100 pages in, so I wanted to kind of give a description of what the book was about and some initial thoughts. So in this book, you are following 6 different characters who are all magicians. They all have extremely powerful magical abilities, and because of the fact that they are some of the most magical people in this world, they are invited to potentially be initiated into this secret society. And if they are initiated, they will be able to have access to the Library of Alexandria, which has all of the knowledge you could ever want. So I believe this book is going to be following these 6 characters as they try to prove themselves and get initiated into the society, but only 5 of the 6 will make it. One of them will not be invited. So that's kind of the main premise, and so far from what I've read, I've basically just been introduced to the 6 different characters and seen what their kind of magical abilities are. And we've also gotten an introduction into what the society is and what it does and what it provides for the people who are involved in it. And I will say, when I first started the book, I was a little overwhelmed with the amount of information that was kind of being thrown at me. You're given within the first couple of pages a bunch of information about this society and what it means to be invited and all of those things. And then you're also given the perspectives of all 6 characters and you're introduced to all of them and their powers. And it was a bit overwhelming at first to be given that much information, but I kind of got the hang of it as I kept reading. It's just kind of one of those things you kind of have to push through and then you start to understand. But it definitely was overwhelming at first, especially because Unported uses so many big words and I have a small brain, so big words plus small brain equals 0 comprehension. It was difficult. I had to have my phone open and kept like Googling the definition of words that she was using, which is maybe just a me problem. Maybe I'm just not smart, but I definitely would not want to play a game of Scrabble against Unported because she would destroy me. So yeah, it definitely was a bit overwhelming and kind of took a minute for my brain to wrap around what was being said. But now that I'm like almost 100 pages in, I definitely have a better understanding, and we've been introduced to all of the different characters and all like the 6 main characters. I find them very intriguing. None of them at this point are super likable, or like they all kind of have these flaws, so I'm interested to see how that progresses and how that plays a role into them being initiated potentially into the society and how it kind of makes them work together to get to that point. Because I think a whole thing is that they have to work together even though only 5 of the 6 will be initiated. So it's like kind of a competition, but they also have to work together. So I am interested to see how that all plays out. But yeah, I mean, I really don't have many thoughts at this point. I don't really feel like I'm loving it yet, but I'm not hating it. I'm just definitely getting introduced to everything and trying to like grasp everything that's being said. But I feel like now that I've gotten past all of the introductions to everything, maybe things will start happening. I know that this is a very like character driven story and they're really really is no plot, which is fine with me. I definitely am more of a character-driven reader, so that doesn't scare me away. So I don't know, I'm interested to see what happens. I'm intrigued. I think it's a very interesting concept. I just don't really feel like super into it right now, but like I'm not hating it either. I just feel very neutral. So we'll see how this continues. Definitely intrigued by the characters and this whole society and everything, and I'm excited to see how it all plays out. I'm here with my final updates for the Atlas 6. I also have a smoothie that matches my shirt, and I don't know why, but that's bringing me a lot of joy. So I had to point it out because it's making me happy. But I did finish the Atlas 6 probably like a couple hours ago now, and while the thoughts are kind of fresh in my head, I wanted to talk about it. Also, if you can hear Sam in the background, I apologize. Sir, I was just apologizing on your behalf. What? The bathroom door is closed and he wants in the bathroom, but there's nothing in there. Anyway, ignore the cat behind me. So yeah, I did finish the Atlas 6, and I think the best way to describe it is I feel pretty just like neutral on it. I was enjoying it while I was reading it. It was a very fine reading experience when I was picking it up, but it wasn't anything that I was absolutely obsessed with either. It didn't do anything that I absolutely hated, but it wasn't something that I was absolutely loving. But picking it up and reading it was enjoyable enough. Like, I wasn't having a bad time reading it, and there definitely were things that I did like about it, so that helped. I thought the characters in this book were pretty interesting. I definitely started out the book feeling really nothing at all for them, obviously, because I was getting introduced to them, but there were some that just didn't really stand out to me, and even some that I felt were pretty unlikable. But as I continued to read the story, I started to actually find that I was rooting for some of them. I think as we started to learn more about the characters and their abilities and their motivations and how those two kind of came together for a lot of these characters, I found them to be a lot more interesting, and I wanted to know kind of their motivations for doing certain things. And yeah, I mean, I definitely, like, at the end of this book, there's definitely some of them that I would say I like. I don't necessarily love any of them, but I do find them interesting characters to follow, especially because you do get the perspective of all 6 of them. Also, something that kind of has to do more so with the world building, but also the characters, is that these characters are basically invited to the society without knowing anything about it. They don't know anything, and obviously as readers, we don't either. So I thought it was kind of cool to, one, learn along with them what everything was and kind of what they had to do, but 2, I just thought it was an interesting premise that these characters don't know exactly what they're getting into, that they get invited into this society or to be potentially a part of this society without really knowing anything about it. I did like that aspect. There also wasn't much of a plot in this book, so if you're someone that like wants a plot even a little bit, I don't think this is the book for you. It's a very character-driven novel, which for me doesn't really bother me because I'm typically more of a character-driven reader. I can read a book where there's little to no plot, but the characters are interesting enough and the vibes are good. So that's kind of the case with this book, but there really was not much of a plot in this book until like kind of the end, I feel like. And even though I am definitely more of a character-driven reader, I think there were definitely moments in this book though that things would be being built up, or like things would happen, and then you would switch chapters and everyone would just kind of go along as usual, and those things that happened weren't really discussed or kind of brought up again until later. So it was just kind of like, even when things were happening, they weren't talked about or explored enough, I feel like. So, and that's coming from someone that is a character-driven reader, so I wish that certain things were kind of discussed a little bit more, or like when things were being built up, it wasn't just like being built up, they happen, and then it's over. Like, I wish that there was a little bit more to the actual things that were happening, but the fact that there really wasn't much of a plot didn't really bother me. I just think there were certain things that I wish we had kind of explored a little bit more. And also for like the magic system in this book, I did find it interesting. It's very like science-based, which is very interesting, but also where I think some of my other problems with this book come in. There were a lot of big words used, like I was saying, and also just like a lot of words used in general. There was a lot of things being said that just kind of went right over my head. There was a lot of science talk when they were theorizing about how their abilities could potentially do something, if they were theorizing about what they could potentially do. When they were talking very specifically about like the science aspect, I did not comprehend. The good thing was, though, a lot of the times those very big-brained sections of the characters theorizing and explaining their thoughts, when they would be very much over my head, a lot of times there would be kind of a follow-up discussion that would kind of clarify and simplify what was being said. So it wasn't like that hard for me to understand eventually, but in the moment there were just a lot of words that I was reading that just were not making any sense to me. But I did think the fact that there was so much science behind the magic was interesting, and I also like in books in general when magic has consequences. It's not just like an endless supply of their abilities. I think that that was really interesting because these characters can't just constantly use their powers and their abilities without there being like some sort of drain on them. It adds a little bit more consequence, or like it adds a bit more stakes, I guess, because it's not just like they can constantly be using their magic to get them out of situations. So yeah, I feel pretty neutral on it. I enjoyed it to an extent. I wasn't, like I said, like I was relatively enjoying my time reading it, and I did read it pretty quickly too. I had little sticky notes for the different sections I wanted to hit each day, and I had no problem doing that. If I wasn't enjoying the book, it would have been a lot harder for me to continue to pick it up and to reach those little sections that I wanted to read each day. So I was trying to read it quickly for the sake of this video. So yeah, I think if I wasn't enjoying it, it wouldn't have gone as quick as it did. So I did like it, but I would say I'm leaning more towards pretty neutral feelings about it. I'm probably gonna give it like 3.5 stars maybe. And to be honest, I would be down with continuing the series, and that was something that I kind of knew would be a big factor into whether I enjoyed this or not, because this is the self-published edition. So the new like traditionally published edition had some changes. It was revised a little bit, and I've heard that you have to read that in order to read the sequel, that there's things that happen in the new version that don't happen in this, or there's some changes that make the sequel what it is, and you wouldn't be able to just read this and go into the sequel, I think. So I knew that if I read this and wanted to continue on with the series, I'd have to read it basically again, but slightly different. And that was when I knew I would know how I would feel about this book if I had to read it again. And I would be down. I'd be down to read the new version. So I think that also says something about how I felt about the book. The fact that I wouldn't mind rereading it to be able to continue on with the series, I think is a good sign. And I also feel like what is being set up in this book, the magic, the characters, and everything that kind of happened at the very end of this book, I think is setting up a very interesting sequel. I just think that there's a lot of potential of where this magic system and these characters and the plot of this book could go. I feel like, at least maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there could actually be more of a plot in the sequel. I feel like what was set up at the end of this book is promising more of a plot in the sequel, and I don't know, I think that the sequel has a lot of potential to be even better than this. For me personally, I know a lot of people really love this book, so that's more of a me thing, but I would be interested in continuing on, which would require me to reread a different version of this book, which doesn't put me off. So I think that that is a good sign. So yeah, I'm feeling like maybe like a 3.5 star. So I was wrong yet again, but it's okay. I mean, at least I enjoyed it. I was a little concerned on if I'd like it or not, because people that I feel similarly about books to have varying opinions on this book. Casey from Casey Can Read gave it 1 star. I know a few of my friends, and like Therese from Therese's Nook, we have very similar feelings, especially on like fantasy books, and she gave it like 4.5 stars. So I was like, where am I gonna fall in this spectrum here? Yeah, I think 3.5 stars is what I'm gonna land on. So I did somewhat enjoy it, and I mean, I'm happy that I liked it, but obviously I'm disappointed it wasn't a 5 star. So I am 24% of the way through The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley, and I thought I'd give kind of some initial thoughts and feels as well as kind of a synopsis for the book. So we're following Jess, who goes to visit her brother who has an apartment in Paris, as you may have assumed. But when she gets there, he's not there. And she thinks there's kind of some suspicious things surrounding him not being there. Like, she doesn't think that he just stepped out. His wallet's still there. His keys are still there. It's just very weird, the fact that he's not there. So she kind of starts to ask around, and I think this book she's going to be trying to figure out what happened to him. She can't really go to the police because she's clearly running from her past, running from her old life. We don't know why. There's just something that clearly has happened with her that she's trying to like get away from, which is why she's visiting her brother. So she doesn't want to involve the police because she doesn't want them like looking too closely at her. So I think she's going to be trying to like figure out what happened to him on her own. And we're also seeing like the different people who live in this apartment. We're getting their perspectives and seeing what they think of Ben, who is her brother, as well as Jess, and her asking around and all of this stuff. So I will say it was probably a bit bold of me to put an adult like mystery thriller book on my 5-star predictions for this year, because I think I've only ever given one other adult mystery thriller book 5 stars, but the other one I gave 5 stars was The Guest List by Lucy Foley. So I think I was like hopeful that maybe this is just the thriller mystery author for me. I don't know. I think The Guest List is like the first like adult mystery thriller that I had read, so I definitely didn't have much to compare it to, but I really loved that book. I thought it was really great. Something I loved about that book, I know we're not talking about The Guest List, but something I loved about that book was that you didn't know who was murdered, but you also obviously didn't know who the murderer was. I thought it was interesting that you didn't know who was the victim. So if there's any other books like that, please let me know some recommendations down below. But yeah, I really like The Guest List by the same author, so that's why I put this on my 5-star predictions list. And so far, I do have some things that I'm liking, but I also have some things that I'm not loving either. I'll start with the more negative things, and it's more so just that I don't feel like super intrigued by it yet. I think the premise is interesting, but it doesn't have me hooked quite yet. I'm not super far, like I said, I'm 24% of the way through, which means I'm on page 88 of this ebook, so I'm not very far in. So there's still so much more of this book for me to read, and hopefully I do get a bit more interested as I continue on, but so far it didn't really like, I'm not intrigued just from the start. I think it's definitely like suspicious. There's some weird things going on with the apartment and her brother's disappearance and the people who live in this apartment. Like, there's definitely some weird vibes going on, but I'm just not super intrigued by it yet. Like, the whole premise, I don't know, I'm just not as like into it as I expected to be. Like The Guest List and even some other thrillers that I've read, I've been like intrigued by right from the start. And this book does definitely like jump right into the plot. It doesn't take really any time at all building up to anything. It just kind of throws you right in, which I really did like, but I just don't feel like super invested in the mystery or the story yet. Something I am liking though is that we're getting a lot of different points of view in this book, which I think is similar to The Guest List. So I really like that we're seeing a lot of different characters' perspectives. We're not just in Jess's perspective, who is the girl who is investigating her brother's like disappearance, because now we're getting information about these characters, these people who also live in this apartment. We're seeing their perspectives on Ben and also on Jess, and I think it's really cool to see some of their interactions with Jess from their perspective. It's not just Jess interacting with these characters and we're like in her head. We're seeing the way these other people in this apartment view her, and I think the different points of views also make me like a little bit more intrigued, because I feel like every character kind of has something that they're hiding or something that's just kind of suspicious about them. So it's like, I think it makes me a little bit more interested to see what is really happening, and also to see if like any of these people could actually like be involved in the mystery. So I am liking the different points of view that we're getting in this book. I will say at this point, I do already have a couple of theories as to what may have happened. I think one could be a little bit more likely than the other one, but I don't know. I do already have a theory, and I really hope I'm wrong. I think a big reason why I haven't enjoyed a lot of the mysteries and or thrillers that I've read so far is because I've predicted what is going to happen super early on. And I know you're probably thinking like, just don't theorize, just don't think about it, just read the book and see what happens. But I can't. It's not like I'm sitting there with like a whiteboard and like, you know, cross-examining all these people and like, you know, I'm not like that meme of that guy like trying to figure out everything. That's not what I try to do when I read thrillers. My brain just never stops overthinking about anything ever. It's just kind of constantly on overdrive all the time. So I think my brain just like latches on to like mysteries and thrillers because it's like I can overthink about something that's a little bit more fun than the things I normally overthink about, which are not as fun and a little bit more stressful and like involve me. So it's fun to like overanalyze what could be happening in this book. So my brain is just kind of constantly trying to think of like what could be the outcome. So I really do wish that I could just read a mystery thriller and like not try and figure it out, but it's kind of hard for that part of my brain to turn off. So we'll see if I'm right. I kind of hope that I'm wrong, just because I want to be surprised. I think that's such a big part of where my enjoyment of thrillers or mysteries come in, is when I'm surprised by the reveals. I do feel like that's a pretty big part of the genre or those genres. So we'll see if I end up being surprised. I kind of hope that I am. So yeah, so far I'm slightly intrigued by what's going on, but I'm not super into it yet. But I still feel like there's plenty of time for me to get really invested in the story and the mystery and be excited to figure out what has happened. It has taken me a while to get to even just this point of the book that I'm at, 88 pages in. It's taken me like a few days to read that. I'm not like super excited or drawn to pick it up. Whereas with the guest list, I know I keep comparing it to the guest list, which I probably should stop doing, but that book, I read like most of it in a day. I actually went back and watched the vlog where I read that book. I think I read like the first 50 pages in a day, and then the next day I just read the rest of it because I couldn't put it down. And I can't say that that has been the same exact case with this book, but I'm hoping I do get to a point where I can't put it down and I'm really invested. We'll see. Okay, brief, quick little update on the Paris apartment. I'm exactly 50% of the way through the book now. I have read this last like quarter of the book, I feel like relatively quickly. I feel like we've actually started to get some of the clues or like some type of theory as to what may be going on. We're starting to get some suspicious things happening, so I do feel a little bit more engaged with what's going on. I still wouldn't say that I'm loving it, but I definitely don't know what's going on. Like, I think when I was saying earlier how I kind of had two theories for this book, I definitely was wrong about one of them, or I think I'm wrong about one of them. Another theory that I had, I feel like is maybe still accurate in some way, but I have no idea how everything's gonna play out. Like, I really do not know where this is going at all. So yeah, I'm definitely more interested now, but I'm still not like loving it. I just don't think the entire like premise of this book and where the direction of it's going, I just don't find it as like interesting, I guess, as maybe some other thrillers and mysteries that I've read. But I'm glad that I'm at least a little bit more intrigued, and that I also like really don't know where exactly this book is going. So I have finished reading The Paris Apartment. I wanted to give some of my thoughts. The curse that I have where I don't enjoy mysteries and thrillers continues, because I didn't like this that much. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. There were things that I did like. I think some of the reveals throughout the book I did enjoy, or I thought were surprising. There were some that I found underwhelming and I don't know, just were kind of stupid. But there were some that I thought were really well done and that I didn't see coming. And I think everything coming together in the end was really well done. The way, you know, you got all of the answers to everything you were trying to piece together throughout the whole book. I did really enjoy that. I really like the way Lucy Foley does her reveals, in the sense that she kind of makes you think that she's giving you the full story, but she's not. And then there's like even more information, or like characters will be holding back the full story to make you think a certain thing, but then you actually get the full story. I just really like the way she kind of rolls out the big reveals in her books. Like, I really like that in The Guest List, and I liked it in this one as well. But honestly, that's like the only thing I really can say. I do think some of the reveals were well done, but other than that, I don't know. I think the overall plot was fine. I didn't find it super interesting and like super like shocking, and I wasn't super invested, but I did find it like okay, like it was fine. I think it was more so just the characters. I just didn't think that the characters were all that interesting. I think there were certain perspectives that I liked getting, but a lot of the characters, and not even just like the main characters that we're getting the perspectives of, there were so many characters in this book. And for what? Like, I understand that maybe she wanted us to be misled and like think certain people are involved, but it was just like, I don't know, there were just so many people that I felt like I had to keep track of, and I just kept getting all of the names confused, and it just kind of made it more difficult to follow, because I was trying to remember certain characters, and then a lot of characters didn't end up doing anything or being really that involved. On top of some of the characters, there were just like certain plot lines and certain like things that happened that did not need to be in this book. I understand the concept of red herrings and wanting to maybe throw off the readers and making us think that something could be bigger than what it seems, something could come back and be involved, or that something might be more significant. So I understand it to a point, but there's a line where it's like, is it a red herring or is it just like not necessary at all? Like, is this just taking up page time that doesn't need to be here? Like, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about this book. It's kind of hard to talk about without getting into spoilers, because I feel like that's where I could actually explain my thoughts a little bit better. There also wasn't anything that I like truly hated. I just didn't really care about anything, and it was really slow getting into it. And then once we kind of got halfway through the book and things started to pick up and you were starting to get pieces of information, I just didn't find it that interesting or engaging. So I just don't think that this was a story that was for me. Also, the main character, Jess, kept making stupid decisions. And I think to a point, I don't mind when characters in thrillers and mysteries make stupid decisions, because sometimes you need characters to maybe make mistakes or to not be always thinking so logically so that the plot can move ahead, or that they find out certain information, or that certain information doesn't get revealed super early. Like, you kind of sometimes have to have characters that aren't making the right decision so you don't just get all the information and then the book doesn't even exist. Like, I think it makes sense to sometimes have characters that are maybe not always the most logical or make stupid decisions, but again, kind of like with red herrings just maybe crossing the line into just being like unnecessary. She was making some stupid decisions that was just like not logical at all. And like, I don't know, it was just, there would be so many times where she would just like give a character evidence. She'd be like, sure, here you go. It's like, okay, wouldn't you want to hold on to that? I don't know. She would also be like super trusting of certain characters for absolutely no reason. Like, they've given her no reason to be so trusting. And she also like doesn't know French, so like certain characters would be talking in French and she's just like assuming that they're saying what they want her to be saying, and it's just like she was just super trusting of characters, and it's just like, why? I don't know. There was just a lot of really weird decisions I feel like made for the characters, for the plot, for everything, and I just didn't love it. So yeah, I think I'm gonna give this like 2.5 stars. I think just at the end of the day, nothing about this is really gonna stick with me. It's not gonna be like, because sometimes I still think about like the guest list, for example, some of those twists, I'm like, oh my god, like that was so good. But this book, I just feel like nothing left an impact on me. I wasn't that invested in the actual story. I just didn't find the actual like content of the characters and the story and the plot and the mystery itself very interesting. Like I said, there were some good reveals. I think there just needed to be more to it than just the reveals, which is so funny and also kind of frustrating, because I feel like with other mysteries and thrillers that I've read, it's always been like, I haven't loved them because I've predicted everything, and I'm like, the reveals being surprising is such a big part of it for me. But like, some of these reveals were surprising for me and I still didn't like it. So I don't know what I want from mysteries and thrillers. I think putting one on a 5-star predictions was just silly for me to do, because I have no idea what I like and don't like in this genre. Like, I really have not liked many at all. So maybe this genre is just not for me. I don't know. I do think there's a couple of like popular thriller mystery authors that I still want to try. I do want to read some of Ruth Ware's books, because I know a lot of people really like them. So I might do that. But I'm like, at this point, are mysteries and thrillers just not for me? Because out of most of the ones I've read, I have not enjoyed them. So I don't know. I don't know what's going on. See, I think I'm going to give this 2.5 stars. So that's not a 5-star. I have definitely flopped. I'm sad that I didn't enjoy it. I don't know what I want from this genre or genres, but I think putting a mystery/thriller on my 5-star predictions list was kind of a clown move on my part. So I take responsibility for that. So that is it for the second installment, the second episode of my 5-star predictions vlogs. And this one was definitely a lot less successful than the first one. We had The Atlas 6 by Unported Blake, which I ended up giving 3.5 stars, which is not a bad rating, but obviously not a 5. And then we had The Paris Apartment, which I did end up rating a 2.5 star. Definitely do not know what I like and what I don't like in mysteries/thrillers. At this point, I'm still pretty new to the genre, so it was pretty bold of me to put a mystery thriller on my 5-star predictions list when I have very rarely given books within those genres 5 stars. So yeah, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what I like within that genre, and I don't know exactly what to pinpoint, what does work and what doesn't. So I still feel like when I was explaining my thoughts on that book, did not really make a whole lot of sense, because I didn't even fully understand why I didn't really like it. It just didn't really work for me. And that's really all I can say about it. So yeah, this definitely was not the most successful 5-star predictions vlog. Unfortunately, we had 2 books that were not 5 stars. I was really hoping to each vlog have at least 1 5-star and be right every single time, because I enjoy being right, but unfortunately not the case this time. But I mean, you win some, you lose some, I don't know. I also forgot in this outro to give kind of an updated look at my 5-star predictions so far this year. As you can see, we've only had 1 so far out of the 4 that I have read so far this year, so I'm hoping the second half of the year, the next 5-star predictions vlogs are a little bit more successful, but this is what it is looking like so far. So definitely let me know if you've read either the Atlas 6 or the Paris Apartment, your thoughts. Were they 5 stars for you? Did you enjoy them? Did you not enjoy them? I would love to know your thoughts and have a discussion about it. Also, if you have any mystery thriller recommendations for me, I'd love to hear them, because I definitely want to find, subgenres within those genres that I enjoy, if that's what it takes. I want to find some that I enjoy, but unfortunately that's been a bit of a journey for me. So if you have any thriller mystery recommendations, please leave them down below. But that is going to be it for the second part of my 5-star predictions vlog, and thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.